everyone. We're going to get started now that it's officially 3:25. So this is a panel discussion among watershed coordinators throughout the state and IDLs discussing success stories that have happened with these watershed projects that have been occurring. We'll have 3 watershed coordinators and a representative from IDLs talking, and each will have about 11 minutes to talk, and then we'll have time for question and answer with all 4 of them at the end. So we're going to start off with Erin Ogle, who is a Taylor County watershed coordinator, and unfortunately I don't have any bio info for her. I do have the other 3, so I'll let her introduce herself a little bit, and then I'll let her kick off.
All right. Okay, so can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, I'm Erin Ogle. I am the coordinator for the Taylor County Water Quality Initiative Project. I went to school at Kansas State University and graduated with an ag engineering degree. And then I started working at the Iowa DNR as an environmental specialist. So I've been in the ag field. So I'm really excited that I'm able to be a part of this project here. So if I can get started. So this is a pilot project in the state, and it's a county-based project rather than an entire watershed project. So it's a little different in that aspect. And we, as a county, we applied for and we received a Water Quality Initiative grant through the Department of Ag. And this was driven by the fact that our county commissioners and landowners saw a need for improvement. They know that as farmers in Taylor County, we have a lot of farmers in Taylor County that farm marginal acres, the side hills. We have several, our topography, we have steeps, rolling hills, thin soils, multiple soil types within a single field. So a lot of times it can be hard as far as yield, high yields, or productive fields. This project is through a 3-year grant available for Taylor County fields. So the landowners have that benefit there. We are partnering with AgSolver, and they are a company based here in Ames. And they are a precision business planning company. They have been a great partner. I've really enjoyed working with them. They bring a lot to the table, and they've really helped this project succeed so far. We did start last year, so we're in the beginning stages of it. They do have a tool or a program called Profit Zone Manager, and this is the tool is incredibly beneficial. It's powerful in the sense that it provides it identifies zones of different profit potential within a field. So a producer can have a dollar amount assigned to how many dollars they're losing per acre in different zones of their field. So they can identify where they're making money, where they're breaking even, or where they're losing money. So it's a very powerful tool. So with this together, we are focusing on seeding down those marginal acres. So we want to try to reduce the amount of the soil loss, the nutrient loss that we have occurring in the county. This project is voluntary, so it's been it's been refreshing to know that there's so many producers that are interested in something like this, because it's a different look on things, because we're asking producers to essentially change part of their operation. As far as instead of farming what they would traditionally farm in corn or bean rotation, we're asking them to consider an alternative. So we are, as I said, we're working with AgSolver. We've had success with that. We've had producers interested, and we've had producers signed up, and so it's been a good kickoff for that. Our incentives with that project, or with the as far as the grant, we are offering incentives for converting row crop to pasture for grazing or haying, as well as small grains, incorporating that into as a 3rd crop rotation, and then incorporating cover crops as well, just to provide a soil stabilization and improve soil health, and along those lines. And then we've had producers come in and call me up, and they've enjoyed the fact that they can virtually evaluate their field on certain practices before making that real world risk, and that which could be a failure in investment or a success in investment. So they like the aspect that AgSolver is able to provide that virtual evaluation before making that risk or taking that risk. And then as far as success goes, we have had producers come into the office and inquire about the project. So the fact that they are interested in potentially changing part of their operation is a very good thing. It's reassuring. And we've come up with a pretty seamless process as far as getting producers involved and started with that project. I sit down with them either on the tailgate, in their kitchen table, on their kitchen table, in the office, wherever works for them. And I'm able to figure out what fields they're wanting to work with. A lot of times it's the fields that are, what they think would be the worst profiting fields. And then other times it's fields that they're just curious on what their profit, what their return on investment is. So I take a look at their fields, and then we process that information because we are able to work with producers with or without yield data. So that's one success that I've been able to portray through this project, because it's not only the fact that it's technology, you don't have to have that combine yield data because they have satellite imagery, county average yields. So they're able to use that and really fine tune and pinpoint where those marginal acres are and that profit that may or may not be positive. So depending on what the producer is interested in, if they have livestock, a lot of times I figure out if they would be interested in the pasture aspect of it, if they're wanting to graze or mow it for hay, if they're interested in a row crop or a small grains rotation. Either way, the producer is usually at this point, whenever they enter their fields into AgSolver and they identify those zones where they can assign that dollar value or dollar amount where they're losing money, they're very interested in, well, if I'm losing money with this corn bean rotation, what would happen if we seeded this down and I was able to have my cattle graze? So as far as other successes, I've had over 50 producers come into the office or call me on the phone, and we talk about the project and how they're interested in the project. They want to be a part of it. They think it's a great idea, along those lines. And then I've had producers from outside counties that want to participate, but unfortunately it's only a Taylor County based project for now. So I've had success there. These numbers actually should be updated after last week. I was able to get some more producers committed and signed up for the project. I have over 25 producers signed up with AgSolver, so they have inputted their fields as far as getting their fields analyzed and processed. I have, at least 13 producers that have been approved through our Soil and Water Conservation District for seeding down those marginal acres that they've come across through the program this spring. So I'm working on getting their conservation plans and things of that nature so they can get seeded down this year. And then I've had, so over 8-9 producers are seeding down to pasture or hay, and then 3 to 5 producers are planning on incorporating terrace or a soil builder, that small grain and cover crop year of rest, essentially is what that's providing. So overall, we've had almost 200 acres signed up to be converted from those marginal acres to a more profitable and more productive practice. So 200 acres may not sound like a lot, but it's 200 of the worst acres in Taylor County. So those we've just gotten started, so I'm really happy with those numbers so far. And with that, I guess, do I take questions?
Questions
at the end? Okay.
Yeah. So as we transition, Corey Meyer will be up next to share some information about his watershed area that he works in. So Corey has worked for the Winneshiek Soil and Water Conservation District for over 12 years as a watershed projects coordinator. The watersheds he has assisted landowners in implementing stewardship practices that have been cold water streams, small pool water impoundments, and an urban rural conservation practice demonstration project in Winneshiek County. His passion is for the outdoors, fuels his inspiration to help advance environmental health for landowners, that holds the key to the waters and ecological uniqueness of Winneshiek County, and also relying on man, you used some big words in here. Tutelage. Teaching Meyer to envision career. I did not write this. Corey and his family reside in Calmer, Iowa, where they are very active in the community with numerous functions and sporting activities. Take the floor, Corey.
I grew up as a wallflower, so I bloomed a little bit. It's one of those things that you get asked to do this, and most of the time I really try to avoid being a part of this, but this is something that I'm very proud of for the fact of what my landowners have accomplished in the Yellow River Watershed Project. So when they asked me to talk about cultural conservation, I thought, well, this is a good opportunity for us to talk about what we have accomplished in this watershed. For those of you that are familiar with it, the Yellow River is actually situated in northeast Iowa, southeast Winneshiek County, then into Moeller County. The watershed that I work on is roughly about 25,000 acres. It is considered the largest cold water stream in Iowa, and it has one of the greatest gradient falls of all streams in Iowa. So that, it's quite unique in that matter. But the problem with it was put on the impaired waters list for impaired bacteria loading. And that was mid to late 2000s when that had happened, occurred. So the district and NRCS and our partners came together once the TMDL had been formulated to start a watershed project then. The area that I'm going to focus on and talk to you guys about was a subset in the Yellow River. But based on our 2 rascal assessments that we had in the Yellow River, we had found that there's just huge densities of cattle on the stream itself. And it reflected back also in the TMDL that was a large part of the issues that was going on in the stream corridor. So when we were going through and initializing what practices and BMPs that we thought would be best for the watershed, the advisory board really wanted to focus in on certain areas of the watershed. We were fortunate enough to have 3 landowners from the watershed be on our advisory board, and they were really helpful not only with the district office and NRCS personnel, but also those landowners. You kind of know where socially a watershed project may go off better to start with, and you want to be able to hit a home run right away instead of sitting and strike out that 0 basically. I'm going to reference baseball as I go through here, and because I'm a huge Cubs fan, so I'm still living off that high. Anyway, going off of that, we wanted to be able to pick a section that we knew we had a lot of issues based on that rascal, but also to come back where we would have socially friendly farmers, and we were picking low fruit basically. So we picked a section. It's on the main branch of the Yellow River, just east of Ocean, Iowa, and north of Castalia, basically Iowa. It's 6.6 miles of flowing stream, basically. There's 15 landowners who reside property in this swath, basically, this yellow area. And as you can see, it's pretty heavily agriculture in that land. It's about 70% of the watershed is actually agriculturally based. And then adjacent to the streams, the stream corridor is really heavily utilized for pasturing. So then the one thing that we wanted to focus on, especially because this corridor area too, is because there was a lot of manure application being put on the landscape also in croplands. So we had a lot of wash-off issues. So what we set up to do, basically, we went out and contacted landowners in these subset areas of the watershed, and specifically went to them, sent letters out, contacted them, had our advisory board members go out and talk to these landowners if they seemed that there was any apprehension, because we're here from the government, we're going to save you, kind of a deal. And it really helped out to have those landowners be a part of it, which constituted a lot of tailgate sitting, like Aaron had said, and sitting at dinner tables, drinking spring growth pop and a lot of cookies. And that's the best thing about going to some of these houses are the cookies, I'm telling you. And what happened and what really worked, we knew which landowners would be receptive at first, so we went in and used those cornerstone landowners of those 15 landowners and picked them out and got them on board And from that, it was basically hopscotching up through the valley of, well, if Joe's doing it, well, you know, I gotta be one better than Joe, or, well, I can't beat him, I might as well join him because he's not gonna fix his fences anymore, so let's do it. So what we had offered through the project, utilizing the CRP program, basically was MPL, so marginal pasture, if it was pasture land. And you can see the incentives up there, what they've got, $72 an acre. Or if it was cropland, they could enroll it for 3 predominant soil types and get a base rate of CRP. And then from that, we utilized at the time was iJob funds. And after that kind of petered out, we had used funds from WSBF 319 and also WERB to throw in extra incentive money on top of. So they were given, and the early adopters were given a $500 an acre bonus, basically, one-time payment. And then after that, they were given $300 an acre bonus just to sign up to participate in the program. And that seemed to be the carrot that kept them going and wanting to participate. And it, in essence, was what made it work. The one caveat we did have, you know, CRP contracts for 15 years. We made them sign a 20-year maintenance agreement. And for those of you that are not familiar with that, if you go through a district, you sign a maintenance agreement that you're committing to maintain that practice. Well, we thought after 20 years of trees or native grasses being planted in these areas, nature started to reclaim them at that time with the hope of people would see the benefit and after that 20 years not till it up or plow it up or doze it out again. So of those original 15 landowners in the 6.6 mile stretch, 12 of them signed up for CRP. It was within a matter of a year to year and a half. We had one that didn't want to go through CRP, and just because didn't like the rules of FSA, so be it. We utilized EQIP funds and for livestock exclusion, and then also stream bank stabilization and project funds. Then we had one landowner that just really doesn't like the government, and he refused to participate in CRP, but he removed all his cattle out of the corridor itself. He did start farming the pasture down, but he still left a 30 to 50 foot buffer on both sides of the stream. One thing I failed to mention before is, you know, these buffers are a minimum of, we'd like to see 120 feet for native grass up to 180 feet on both sides for trees. So, oh, and we had one landowner too that just had a long residing, just distrusted. He had bad dealing with the district many years ago, so he just said he didn't want to participate, but sort of, because he did actually come around in the end. So overall, of that stream corridor, that's 6.6 miles, 90% of that corridor that was eligible for CRP or through watershed practices was enrolled in some kind of practice, and livestock was removed from the stream corridor itself, which would total about 94 acres. Every one of the CRP plantings, whether it was native trees or native grasses, had some kind of a plan done for it. The tree plantings were actually through our district forester, Greg Heidebrink and Jason Walker, and some of those plantings involved over 30,000 trees. So you think about 30,000 trees being planted in a stream corridor, and think about the millions of root fibers that are associated with that. So every time there's a flooding event, you know, you name it, there's all those root fibers grabbing onto the excess nutrients. And the biggest thing is we got the livestock off the corridor itself. Additionally, if you remember that picture where the long stream corridor went down, there was 1.3 miles of stream feeders coming in, or side tributaries that came in that folks had put in CRP practices, which equated to 33 more acres of filter strips in the stream corridor. So basically, you know, referencing back to baseball again, you think about it, it was a cultural inside the park, because once we got in and got our gateway conservation practices in place, it led to another practice, to another practice, to another practice. The landowners, they seen the benefit of it, and they just kept going. They applied over 1.5 miles of stream bank stabilization in the corridor, and 2.1 miles of stream exclusion of cattle. So in a couple of instances, the landowners actually kept their pasture And what they did is fenced off with high tensile fencing out away from the CRP contract itself, and they went into rotational grazing contracts with limited access through the stream for watering than going to their other paddocks. So it was pretty unique in that matter. And what was exciting too, 3 of the largest wetlands basically left in the Yellow River in Winneshiek County basically were enrolled in this section. So there's 2 large oxbow wetlands and actually one basically fen peat bed that was highly being devastated by livestock that now is been enrolled into the CRP program. So that's pretty unique in the fact of the matter that we were able to protect those areas too. And I think I have a picture. And that was one of the oxbows. So if everybody knows what Winneshiek County looks like, we don't have a lot of those things. You know, wetlands are pretty rare. So anytime we get a chance or opportunity to protect them, it's kind of it's a home run basically to protect them. So one thing that when we went through this and we got all these landowners on board, I'm a huge proponent of it's not us, it's the landowners. Because after my 7 or 10 years in that watershed, they're the ones who are going to still be in that watershed. So I go out of my way to try to show that our landowners have done this and they have accomplished this. And so through that, I believe one of the greatest accomplishments is marketing the successes that we've had based on what the landowners have done. And from this watershed itself, I've had several landowners who are, you know, VIP award winners for our district. And this last year, we actually, Dale and Karen Green were selected as the 2016 Iowa Conservation Farmers of the Year. So I feel like it's, since we're using these tax dollars, you know, that are put into the system, we want to show the people, not only of our state, you know, of our county, our state, of all the hard work that is being committed by landowners, and that these dollars that they're committing are actually going on the land and doing something. So that's the one reason why I've really gone my way to try to show folks what is being accomplished. So that's why legacy. So overall, and this is my last slide because I'm long-winded, we've put in 16.7 miles of filter strips in just that 25,000 acre watershed. And a lot of that's been based on using that formula of incentives. This is the benefit why we're doing it. We're tying it back to water quality monitoring. Originally there was 80 or 100, almost 150,000 feet of flowing stream that had livestock access. Since the project has been initiated, 59%, or about 88 to 89,000 feet of the stream now no longer has unfettered access by livestock. So either through the CRP program or through fencing, rotational grazing, we've gotten the cattle up off the stream. And one of the greatest testaments, you know, we have that bacteria impairment on the watershed. The lowest reach of the Yellow River before it enters into Meeyer County, through our long-term water monitoring, we've showed a 43% reduction in bacteria loading, which is kind of huge for the fact you got to remember that part of Winneshiek County is very karst and bacteria likes to move. So to me, that just shows the testament of the landowners in going up into those sub-watersheds and putting practices on the ground has really reduced the bacteria loading. And as of this time, we have over 40% of the landowners have utilized funding through our watershed project in that 25,000 acres, and every day we have more. And one of the greatest things, you know, people love, you know, warm fuzzy winning ends to any game or any situation. The Yellow River, like I said, is the largest cold water stream, but the majority of the trout seem to be in Meeyer County. Well, in one of our keystone landowners in this 6.6 mile stretch, last fall or last summer before the floods, we had went in with Iowa DNR Fisheries, we work closely with them, and they were doing surveys of the small cold water streams in northeast Iowa to find out if there's any remnant population of trout, and looking brook trout or areas that could be restocked. And lo and behold, on the section of greens, there was actually a thriving trout population that had moved in. The closest stocking of trout is downstream 5 miles away, and those fish had moved upstream 5 miles. And what is even greater about that is a good section of that 5 miles difference is losing stream, so it's dry majority of the year. So obviously those fish have migrated to that point, and now that they're at that point where we've done all this work, they have basically set up home in a house. So it's been fun, and I hope if anybody has any questions, we can answer them afterwards.
Corey? Up next we'll have Shannon Meller, who is the project coordinator for the Iowa Seed Association. So Shannon grew up on an acreage near Pella, Iowa, and has always had an interest in soil and landscape around her. She went to Iowa State University initially for agriculture education, but ended up with a degree in agronomy, specializing in soils and environmental science. As someone who works for Rick Cruz, I'd say good choice. Shannon started her career in water quality as a project coordinator for the Benton-Tama Nutrient Reduction Demonstration Project based in Benton, Iowa. She was in this position from April 2015 to May 2016, and during this time the project gained momentum and became known across the United States. Shannon moved from Benton to Waverly, Iowa area last May, and now serves as the coordinator for the Iowa Seed Corn Cover Crops Initiative, which is a new WQI project that focuses on seed corn production across all acres in Iowa. In 2016, Shannon worked with nearly 200 seed corn acres across Iowa. So,
Seed corn farmers.
Seed corn farmers.
Do I need the microphone? Can you all hear me in the back? Okay, I will use it. Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you for the introduction. So the Iowa Seed Corn Cover Crops Initiative is one of the new projects, one of the new water quality demonstration projects that started last year and runs through the end of next year. The Iowa Seed Association is the grant holder, so that's who I'm employed through, and then our cost share funds come through the Department of Ag. We provide cost share for cover crops on seed corn acres, that's $15 an acre, and there's growers can use any cover crop species or mix that they would like to on however many seed corn acres that they would like to try, whether that's one field or 900 acres, however much production they've got. And so this project is unique in several ways. Seed companies have partnered with the Iowa Seed Association to promote this project and the use of cover crops after their seed corn harvest. So that's where my recruiting is done through. So whereas Corey and Taylor work out of NRCS offices and they might do mailings and other such activities to try to recruit participants, I'm kind of off the hook from that aspect. I just send out an email to companies and they send out an email to all their growers, and then they just come, the paperwork just comes rushing in. At least that's how it has been working so far. This project is a statewide project, so that's another kind of a unique thing that we've got going on versus the watershed-based project. So this one, and then there's another project through that Practical Farmers of Iowa is involved with that are water quality initiative statewide projects. Growers can have any level of cover crop experience, and so they can be first-time users, they can have used cover crops for 10 or 15 years, still get cost share for it. And last year we saw, I'll just move on to that. So we do have a Twitter account, and I do apologize, I just modified this presentation from one that I give to seed corn companies. So there are pictures on it, but they're at the end. So we'll get there. So last year we cost shared on nearly 35,000 acres across 24 different counties, which I've marked there. So I work out of a home office. I'm located in Waverly, so it's not exactly centrally located, but as you can see from this map, there's not really a way to be centrally located. We had over 175 applicants, so that's several growers that contacted me last year. Since they were first-time cover crop users, they were able to get a higher incentive rate from going through a statewide initiative through the Department of Ag. So we had a few there, and then there were a few cancellations over the course of winter. But I would estimate we've still got well over 30,000 acres of cover crops out there right now. We had about a 50-50 mix between we saw a lot of oats and radish being used. So oats, in order to receive cost share on oats, in Iowa that has to be seeded by about mid-September. Typically, if growers for this project were doing any kind of interseeding, doing aerial seeding, or they had an early harvest, which seed corn acres are harvested earlier. So there's a lot of opportunity to plant oats there. And then cereal rye was the other common choice for cover crops that we've seen. And then I have just a slide here about the future of the project. So we did go through 2/3 of our 3-year cost share budget last year. So everyone tells me that's a good thing, but when we asked the Department of Ag for $500,000 this spring, they said we can't just do that right now. So we're hoping that we'll be able to kind of pinch pennies and find stuff here and there and be able to fund however many applications come in this year. So far I've been going around to, like I said, since I don't have to technically really recruit growers, but I sent out an email like the first week in January to all of the companies that participated and told them that I'm available to speak when they have grower meetings. So I went to, 7 or 8, probably by the end of this month I'll have about a dozen meetings under my belt, going to different seed corn companies. So we've got about 75 applications for cost share so far this year. So we are well on our way to having just as much interest, if not more. And I'm forgetting one thing. Our first-time users, approximately 50% of the cover crops, of the growers that signed up for cover crops through this project last year, had never used cover crops before. And so that's a pretty good involvement. We're talking, about 70 people that had never used cover crops before that had this funding availability for them to try it. And we hope that with seed corn production, every 5th row is mowed down in the middle of July or so. And then the rest of the plants are detasseled. So you're looking at a field that's short. It's 4 rows of corn and then a gap and then 4 more rows. And so there's less residue afterwards, earlier harvest. It's really a great opportunity to plant cover crops and not have to worry about it failing for any reason, as long as your seed's good. I gotta put that. We have one field that had some poor oats that didn't germinate, but besides that, every field that I've seen at least has looked really great. So I do have a few photos here. Wanted to show the variety of seeding methods that we saw and the variety of cover crops. So this was in Taylor County, done with the Miller High Boys, so it's a high clearance sprayer. This was seeded in the week where July runs into August is when this was seeded, so right around August 2, I believe. And I was out there mid-October. This is about 80 pounds an acre of cereal rye, about 1.5 bushels. So really great stand. I don't know if you can really tell how tall it is in this picture, but it's really thick, probably a solid 8 inches or so. And of course, with our warm winter, it was warm through November, and then it started being warm again in February. This field is well on its way to being green this spring as well. And this is in Fayette County, so this would be northeast Iowa, and oats and radish drilled immediately after seed corn harvest. So this has about 6 weeks, 7 weeks growth on it by the time I was out there. And as you can see, the oats are almost as tall as the stalks. So we do, while we allow any cover crop to be used, we do kind of put a little sentence in, or I do when I go to these meetings, that typically for first-time cover crop users, especially if they're nervous about a cover crop getting away from them in the spring, we do encourage oats in that aspect. While you don't get the overwintering benefits of cereal rye, you do get the benefit of not having to worry about spring termination. And as you can see, it grows plenty tall enough in the fall to have at least some ground cover in the winter, even if the roots aren't active. This is oats and radish in Webster County, and the cattle, this was a field that was being grazed. The cows are about belly high, right here in this picture. This particular producer, he was able to get this seeded during the first week of August. I believe August 5th or 6th was the seeding date they reported. And then I was out there a few weeks. He turned his cows out in there around the 1st of October, and I talked to this grower right before Christmas, maybe December 20, and he had just taken his cows out the previous week. So between the stalks and the oats and the radish and the long warm fall we had, they were able to get really great feeding value out of this. And then his neighbor tried triticale. So this is, I think, the only field of triticale we've got for the project. But again, just wanted to show the variety of cover crops that are being used in Iowa. And this was broadcast on and very lightly vertical tilled. You can see the stalks are still standing as if they're pretty much mostly undisturbed. This was broadcast on with their fall fertilizer. And so that's a pretty popular method for seeding around the state. Particularly, after seed corn acres are looking at going to soybeans the next year. This is up in Kasuth County, and one thing we are kind of struggling with is getting cover crop interest in north central Iowa. And I saw anyone who's on the MCCC email list, the Midwest Cover Crops Council list, Sarah Carlson had just sent out an email kind of describing these same issues, but growers, that's a very heavy soil area and very heavily tilled area. So we do kind of have some interest. I had 5 cover crop applications from Kasuth County last year, and this is the only one that actually went through. So this was oats, radish, and crimson clover seeded in standing seed corn in early September. So this was aerial seeded the first week of September. And this grower wants to get it in earlier this year. So we talked about that just last week. And this was in Marshall County the first week of August with a high clearance sprayer. So interseeded oats and radish. And again, I want to say this is a little over a bushel of oats and then 6 pounds of radish an acre. So one thing that is interesting that I got to observe is that the earlier the radish are planted, the more space they take up. So definitely, if anyone is thinking about incorporating them, they definitely thrive in the earlier seeded, lots of sunshine, lots of warm weather. And this is in Story County, so we're in Story County right now, so just a few miles northeast of here. This is cereal rye broadcast and vertical tilled. So very light soil disturbance. This was more for the stock chopping type of machine is what this grower wanted to do. So grew all the way through November. I just wasn't here to take pictures of it. And this is in Grundy County, so getting towards the Cedar Falls area. Oats and turnips drilled after seed corn. So this was the only field that, at least of the ones that I visited, which I did not get to all 30-some thousand acres. I just was able to look at a few fields here and there as I was meeting with farmers. So this was the only one I saw that was turnips. And this was seeded about a month later than the other picture that had the windmills in it. So you can see that the oats have not headed out yet. So that's definitely kind of a reason, sometimes we talk about seeding dates in one cover crop versus another. So definitely the earlier you seed oats, the bigger they're going to get, even though we had warm weather all through October and all through November. These oats didn't get, as ripe as the ones that were seeded in August. And I think this is my last picture. This is in Cedar County, so southeast Iowa. And this is cereal rye broadcast. Again, broadcast with their fall fertilizer and vertical tilled in early October. So you can still see the stalks standing, so just a light tillage done there. And had maybe 5 weeks of growth on it when I was out there. So you can see the difference here between this picture and the first one that I showed. Definitely the cereal rye also grows faster when it's warmer, but as long as they get it in the ground and get a few weeks growth before winter, it definitely does a great job of protecting the soil and improving water quality over the winter. I think that's it for me.
And up next, we have Will Myers, who is the Water Quality Projects Coordinator for the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship.
Did you have a presentation?
He does. And he'll be talking on how Iowa provides support to these projects and help coordinators be so successful. Unfortunately, Will, I've noticed on my page, your bio is blank too, which technology has failed me.
Oh.
So speaking personally, I can say he is very excellent to work with, although he did go to the University of Nebraska.
I went to Iowa State and University of Nebraska.
So he went somewhere where, it ended up okay in the end, Iowa State. But I'll let you say a few words about yourself and then jump in.
Sure, thank you, Hannah, for the wonderful bio.
You're welcome.
Well, as Hannah mentioned, so I'm the Water Quality Initiative Projects Coordinator. I'm with IDALS. I've been working with water quality programs for about 15 years now. Did some work out in Nebraska before I moved back to Iowa. So I am an Iowa native. Grew up locally in central Iowa, just outside of Dallas Center, actually is where I grew up. So a lot of this stuff really is very personal to me, and have a strong passion for water quality. So I was really excited to get involved with the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy, and was actually involved in some of it, when it was very first being drafted, when I was doing some work over with the state of Nebraska as well. So exciting opportunities that we have here. We've came a long way in just a few short years, but it's no secret we have a monumental task upon us, and a very long way to go. So I'll keep my comments pretty brief today, because I want to allow for some questions from the audience. So, rather than me talk a bunch about IDALS and what we're doing, I just wanted to quickly put a couple of slides just to, so we were talking about whether we want me to present, on the front end or the back end, so I'll jump a little to the front and then to the back, and then I'll stop. So the Water Quality Initiative, we had a couple of the coordinators talk. We have many coordinators that are in attendance today. For those that don't know, we hear a lot about these different types of demonstration projects, where they are, where they're located, and we always then, from IDALS, the funding agency, will throw a lot of stats associated with it. So Water Quality Initiative, essentially that's the program that's through the Iowa legislature that funds the implementation of the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. So we've got a number of projects. There's 45 current demonstration projects. Shannon mentioned, and a lot of the coordinators that spoke brought up some really good points about the diversity of what we're trying to do, the distribution, where our areas are focused at. So it's not only watershed based, it's not only focused on a specific practice type of implementation, but we're also looking at fostering urban-rural partnerships, those type of things. So these are, I'm not going to go through these slides here because it's a lot of words, but I want to hit on a few things. The session is about successes and how do we position a project to be successful. And that's really what my role is in IDALS, is to work with the project coordinators, to work with project development, to work with these different partners and entities to form these successful partners and relationships. So, I'm not the one who is generally working with the farmer. The project coordinators, really take on that role. They're the folks who work with communities, work with those partners, those type of things. We really try to provide the support and facilitate those efforts whenever we can from IDALS. So we work with not only the projects locally, but we also work with their partners as well. As everyone knows, coming back to what we're trying to do within the strategy, it's absolutely monumental and it's big. So how do we get there? Well, this is, sort of a non-traditional approach with these demonstration projects, whereas, in the past we've had objectives of things that, hey, this is a goal we need to meet our water quality objectives. How do we go about doing that? Well, there's a number of ways to do it, but first and foremost, we want to find out what works as well and incorporate all the things we need to do, the monitoring, the planning, all those type of things. So it's really just trying to build these efforts on a number of different scales and build upon those successes. So that's what we try to do within the IDALS, is really to try to put the things in place that we need to make sure that we're seeing successes on a number of different levels, and then be able to build on those. So a lot of information kind of scattered about, but I think it kind of puts us into hopefully a place where we can answer some additional questions. And as always, if you guys have questions, be more than happy to answer those later. So last slide. So I went pretty quick there. So all right. So
Is it cleanwateriowa.org? There you go.
yeah, and exciting changes coming to cleanwater.org here in the coming weeks too. So stay tuned on that one as well.
So open up for questions. I think it's best if you three join well up here. You can pull up a chair or stand, potentially, depending on your comfort level. And then open the floor to questions from the audience. Four. Shannon.
I wanted to be another session right now too.
Are you trying to escape in the middle of your?
No, I'm having Shane ask questions for me in the next room.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask this question of Erin, and maybe rather than putting her on the spot, I should put you on the spot.
Probably.
When I think about Taylor County a little bit, and I think of the phrase, history has a habit of repeating itself.
Sure, sure.
Has anyone looked at how far back you had to go to see these same acres that are being converted to when they were last grass?
You know, actually, that might be a better question for Aaron, because I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. And actually, Dan, you might be the best one to answer that question, because you've got more of a history down there than we do. So.
I don't know. That's a good question. I've usually, as far as the history of that field or that I guess rotation, I find out whenever I talk to the producer individually. But as a whole, I'm not sure what that would be. A lot of times, these acres have never been, according to that producer or that farmer. They've never been anything other than corn bean rotation. So the fact that we're offering an alternative for that pasture or some sort of seeding down alternative, I guess that landowner or that tenant may not have even considered that, or it's just not part of that rotation. So, I mean, that's a good question.
And I think you're talking about coming in and out of production,
Right.
just as things have
Whether it
changed
be
over.
CRP or just
Right,
the
yeah.
cattle industry as a whole. I mean,
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah. And we've seen, a lot of changes, not only in the state, but
Yes.
nationwide, as, there any number of factors have impacted that. So, yeah.
She had mentioned that there was a $15 an acre cost share for the cover crops, or somebody did.
Me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, what is the total cost without the cost share? What would be the cost per acre for a cover crop?
Typically, we estimate $40 to $50 an acre. So that's all dependent on if they, if you use a mix like oats and radish versus a single species, that's typically going to be just a little bit higher. If you get your seed from the co-op versus growing it yourself or something like that, termination costs are taken into consideration. So when you think of seeding a winter hardy cover crop, and this varies from farmer to farmer whether they think of it as an additional cost, because some producers, when they do, they go out and spray their rye in the spring, they just think of it as they would normally be spraying anyway. So some of them don't think of it like that. Some of them think of it as having an extra cost of termination. So typically $40 to $50 an acre is the estimate. Of course, if you're planting it yourself with machine equipment that you've got, like some of these planted it after harvest, farmers maybe aren't thinking of it as a cost, which I think is great, but we do see their time, their fuel, their equipment use as being a factor in cover crop costs.
So your cost is actually an equation of seed plus labor?
Yes, yep.
Mike?
Do you find farmers being more responsive if you're looking at more of a county-wide approach the watershed approach, or does it really make much difference? Is there?
You're the one
Are you
working with
asking
both
me,
types
or
of
do you want someone else to
projects.
jump in there?
I'm just curious.
Myself personally, watershed, it seems to be more successful in what I've done. In fact, I back that up is you'll sort of get in these pockets. And, you know, one landowner does it and it's that there's a competitive nature somewhat. And this is working for them. Well, you know, he might get a step ahead of me, so they start going, and I kid you not, it's that way where it is competitive, and all of a sudden when the whole neighborhood's doing it, and you literally go over the next drainage and there's nothing. We see that quite a bit, and especially no-till systems. You know, it's black up and downhill both ways, and you go to the next hill, and then for the next mile and a half, 2 miles, it's all no-till. You need somebody to be that early adopter, and it seems like you get that early adopter, and they try out, work some kinks out of it. The neighbors seems to be more, feel safe to install those practices. I guess that's my experience.
Yeah.
I could say that too. So I do a lot of work with Middle Cedar watershed producers, partially because that's a heavy seed corn area. It's just south of where I currently live, and I have history there with the Benton-Tama project and some producers. And I can definitely see a difference in both, like when I think of like Blackhawk, Benton, and Tama County area. Very heavily conservation, especially in the targeted watershed areas. And there's a lot of seed corn production there. And then now that I'm working with seed corn production all over, I see farmers, you know, in the southern half of Tama County doing things. Well, Tama County is a bad example because it's hills and they are conservation, but just in different areas outside of the watershed-based incentives, there is less no-till and less cover crop adoption. Like you might see all of these seed corn fields covered, but no soybean fields. Versus in the targeted watershed approach, you see farmers putting cover crops on their after corn and soybeans.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this question is for you, Will. The watershed project relying food factors off and boots on the ground and taking time to develop relationships with farmers, producers, and also takes time to see the benefits
Right.
of some of these soil health practices. But some of these limitations, such that we drive for only 3 or 4 years of staff. What are some possibilities or examples to make those positions more stable, more desirable, or a little more long-term, whether that's funding through IDOLs or at the state level, or leveraging that with partners, just to get more boots on the ground and, you know, develop relationships, take 2 or 3 years to produce, so you gain some trust, and then it's gone, and then you gotta rebuild it again before we go to the other side.
Absolutely, yeah, and you know, that's an outstanding question, and you can imagine we've been asked that question quite frequently. So, and you know, the project durations, you know, it's really just part of the legislative structure of things, why we have that 3 years in there. You know, and as Corey and some of the other folks that are in the room, you know, the projects now, and just for an example, you know, our first 8 projects that we had, you know, those projects are now in their first 3-year extension. So, you know, it was never the intention that these projects would be 3 years, we have everything solved. You know, there's obviously a progression that it takes much longer to 3 years. And you're also, you know, and we aren't going to see the results and meeting any of these goals or any sort of measurable reductions in any short-term things of any statistical significance or all those type of things. So it's really, all of these things kind of play into that discussion on, you know, and we do have an issue that comes with that, you know, whereas, you know, we see this as, you know, a longer term goal where we've got 3 years, we tend to continue with those and evolve and build on the successes that we had in these programs or in these projects, and then, you know, over time, you know, scale up those efforts as we're able to, you know, get additional funding to the program, bring additional dollars into it. So it's really an effort that builds over time, but it has been an issue because the perception still falls back to we've got 1 year, we've got 3 years left, And that's a difficult thing when we have a lot of young professionals that are coming in and they don't see that as this perception of stability. And most of us, including myself, started out in a similar position that was like that, and eventually, moved to other things as well. But it's something that we're continuing to have discussions on how we can make improvements to that structure that we've had in place for a long time. So some of those are larger discussions, but that's kind of what we want people to look forward through that, and hopefully not just see it in that short window. So.
I guess as part of that, in our EPA 319 funded program, we've funded watershed projects now for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years because we realize we can't improve any water in 3 years. And if our goal by our funding agency is to actually improve the water body and possibly take it off the entire waters list, 3 years is not long enough. We need longer term watershed projects. The downside, though, is that with a limited amount of money, it means to keep working in a watershed without long time. We can only fund fewer watershed projects. So, so that's the downside.
Other questions? Mike?
This is for Aaron, and Aaron, I apologize, this is going to be somewhat of a long question. So I just kind of noticed in your project, and maybe you touched on it, didn't see it, but those sensitive acres that you're addressing for AgSolver, you're basically trying to get guys to seed them down in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through CRP or just doing it on their own. Are there other options available for change of management of those acres that doesn't require them to seed them down, that basically isn't the brass ring, but it's the one made of copper that gets you a step farther, but maybe not where you want to be? So changes in management, like if they're doing minimum tillage, they would do no-till and managing their nutrients differently to specifically address those areas that are less productive in a way that get some sort of environmental benefit, but maybe not to the extent of seeding down.
Sure. Well, our project, I guess, is focusing on the seeding down, but yes, through AgSolver, we're able to, I guess part of AgSolver allows a budget, a producer to input a budget. So if they want to incorporate no-till, or if they want to try a new practice of that nature, buffer strips, or whatever they so choose as far as changing that management, they are able to input that into their personal budget, and so they can go through and they can determine how much they would spend on or save if they decided to do no-till, or if they decided to do a cover crop, or if they decided to do continuous corn, or vice versa instead of the corn bean rotation. So with the AgSolver benefit, they can see a financial benefit of that, of doing an alternative practice. But yes, they're able to use, any alternative practice that they want to try, even if it's not something that our project is providing financial incentive for. They're definitely able to use that and visually see that financial benefit. So if they want to try a different management practice, then yes, that's definitely something we are encouraging. So AgSolver provides that great partnership, because they're able to help a producer work through and decide, what management practice would be most beneficial on those sensitive acres, those marginal acres.
Time for one more question.
John?
Yeah, how does that work with AgSolver? Do they contract with the different producers independently, or is there?
That's a good question. The AgSolver subscription is free for the Taylor County landowners, because that was written into part of the grant, so the grant helps offset that cost for that landowner. Otherwise, AgSolver is open to anybody in the nation, and it ranges from, I'm not quite sure what their rate is right now, but it ranges from I think $250 a year to, and it goes up from there. So. But again, I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, for the project, the Taylor County landowners do have that free benefit there through the grant.
Thank you,
Thank you.